Hello and good morning, everyone. First of all, I wish to thank every one of you for taking your time to join us today. This event is jointly organized by Bursa Malaysia and M Investment Bank, and the focus area will be on the new normal, how e-commerce third-party logistics is evolving in the age of COVID-19. I would like to thank Lin Zheng and of course the COO, Mr. Lin Zheng, for agreeing to be our guest speaker today. My name is Jean from the Equity Research Team of M Investment Bank covering the transportation sector. I will be your host for today. We will start off the webinar today with a presentation by Lin Zheng, our guest speaker today, followed by a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to share your thoughts and participate in the discussion. Before we start, please allow me to briefly introduce Lin Zheng. Lin Zheng is one of the top 4 fastest growing tech-enabled firms in Singapore, which combines tech to the traditional express logistics businesses to maximize efficiencies as it provides delivery solutions for businesses across Southeast Asia. It now has its footprint covering 6 countries in the region, and among them include Malaysia. In May last year, Lin Zheng raised a sum of 279 million USD, which is about 1.1 billion ringgit Malaysia, in its Series D funding round, and became one of Southeast Asia's largest startup investment squads since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. Among its backers in the round were Facebook co-founder Eduardo Severin's B Capital Group, venture capital firm Monks Hill Ventures, ride-hailing company Grab, and 2 sovereign wealth funds. So without further ado, I give my great pleasure to invite Mr. Lin Zheng to start the presentation. Over to you, Lin Zheng.
Introduction of what we're going to cover today. So first, I will give a quick introduction of myself and the company. Then we will talk about how COVID-19 has impacted the supply chain and how that has the impact on us as well. Next, I will talk about how retail is like and how e-commerce in the new norm as we all live with the impact of COVID-19. Then with that, we look at the outlook based on the emerging trends for 2021, and I'll share some key takeaways from this presentation. Then at the end, I will give a more deeper dive into our Lin Zheng's a bit more details on Lin Zheng at the end. So if you have any question, you can ask me at the Q&A. So first, I'll give a quick introduction. So I'm Lin Zheng, I'm the CEO of Lin Zheng Malaysia. So I started out in Lin Zheng in 2017 in regional operations. I look after the warehouse operations across 6 countries. I took on the role here in Malaysia back in 2018, and now I look after all the operations in Lin Zheng Malaysia. So some of my previous experience includes in telecoms and in management consulting. So a quick overview of Lin Zheng. So Lin Zheng is a tech-enabled logistics company. So we provide all. So with the tech portion, we help to connect shippers across Southeast Asia. So we are in 6 markets: Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand. So overall, we serve more than 1 million shippers and also deliver close to 80 million people. So how has COVID-19 impacted the supply chain? So if you look at how COVID-19 has impacted the supply chain, so first we look at COVID-19. I think these numbers is outdated every day. Things has been growing a lot. Globally we see 100 over million cases, 2 million over deaths, and the worst financial year that is recorded since the Great Depression. Locally, we also have a growing number of cases, 200 over 1,000, with 800 plus death and countings. And with this impact, what this impact is, there's a big change in the economy and how it's operating at the moment. So looking at the impact on the supply chain, so it has impact everything. So I mean, from the start, when everyone realized that it's quite serious, that lockdown is inevitable, there will be a lot of rush on even supply chain from food and so on. I mean, if you think about at the start of COVID-19, right? Everyone was thinking about like, oh, I need to stock up like toilet paper, like those dry goods and so on, right? So the one of the overused word for last year is unprecedented, but really everything was really new, and everything was not. We can't see the trend from the past, so we had to. I think the impact on supply chain, we have to really adapt from every as and evolves rapidly, as even in days, weeks, and days type of changes. So in that sense, based on these changes, costs also start to increase as people demand more of certain goods. If you are not able to get them in time, I think one key one would actually be also on face masks. I think at the start, face mask was only used for selected purposes, mainly in the medical field. But when this COVID happened and the advisory was that to wear face masks, there was a big shortage and the price went sky high. And then when the production actually caught up with the demand, you can see the prices actually stabilize over. I think right now, I think it's at a acceptable rate. So with this, all and also coupled with all the travel restrictions, even at state level, national level, there's a lot of issues where we have to. There's a lot of unintended consequences that impacted us that I'll cover over more in the next slide, more on the flights. And at the same time, the industry also faced a surge of deliveries. I think there's a big change in the deliveries in terms of when it was more retail predominant. The deliveries were more on bigger trucks to bigger trucks going to store. But as the pandemic occur and lockdown, the change is more from store deliveries, move more to a doorstep or office deliveries. So one of the three main impact for us on the supply chain first is on the limited cargo capacity. So what people might not realize is that as we have a lot, as the air travel grows over the last few decades, you see that there's passenger flights daily. If you go KLA, there's full of flights, full of passengers. What you do not really see is that actually there's a lot of cargo that is on the belly space. So with the restriction in the cargo, with the restriction in travel, the profitable part of air travel where its passengers pay for the flight is gone. The belly space actually becomes unavailable. So imagine when if you have a lot of goods coming in from China, you have a lot of China visitors, tourists. At the same time, it brings a lot of goods in to the country, and these are at a cost that is balanced with the cost of the flight. But when the passenger dries up, when there's travel restrictions, all these flights will stop, and we can only depend on freighters. And what we see is that this impact is also with the ban between West and East Malaysia. As the flight stop, we see that the costs and the lead time for East Malaysia deliveries actually increase very significantly, because used to have like many AirAsia flights going daily, but now that is all limited to a couple of freighters that were operating back then. I think things have gotten better over the last few months, but with the new MCO in place, we do see that the limited capacity is still issue in the market at the moment. On the second part is more on the limited operating hours and the COVID SOP. So at the start, we do have some limited operating hours. We have to operate in the shorter delivery windows. We have to stop and close our stations by 7, where we used to deliver at times to 10. So the limitation requires us to get more drivers. At the same time, for safety measures, I think we needed to change our operating model very quickly. We had to implement contactless delivery, as we don't want our couriers to be carriers of to spread disease, the virus, and to reduce the risk of contacting and be carriers either. So we had to implement contactless delivery very quickly, and this also impacted our operations. So last, we talked about disproportionate cost structure. So right at the start of the MCO, we see that everyone of last year, if you think about back in March, April last year, at the start of the first MCO when it was very strict, only very selected industries could work. everyone was not so sure what will happen. And actually right at the start of the MCO, we see volumes actually dropping. People are not sure how to sell the products online, whether they could operate and so on, right? So whether they are considered essential services or not. So we see that drop. So at the start, we were thinking about cost cutting mode. Like we were thinking, okay, now the business is going down, we need to start maybe cutting some costs. But what we see is from week 3, week 4 onwards, as the SOP becomes clearer, and businesses know what are the boundaries for them, how they can operate, we see the volume actually increase very significantly. And with this increase, with this increase in demand, we see that the cost increase is also disproportionate. So previously, let's say we plan based on normal business growth year on year, we can plan our truck purchase, we can plan our rental of our warehouse and drivers hiring in a more controlled manner, in that the cost can be controlled as we grow. But as in the short term, when there's a short spike and we having to meet the demand, the cost is actually more expensive. Imagine if you buy a truck with a bank loan versus you have to go to a company to rent the truck for a short-term period. So those costs actually adds up in the short term. It then, in order to meet the demands of the market. So looking at this, right? So going to the main topic of what the retail and e-commerce will be in the new norm. So how all these have impacted us but before we start on this, right, let's think about this question again. What's the essential services? We think of this is a topic that I think people has been debating about, even across in different parts of the world, like in different countries, different. Like maybe in France, bookstore is considered essential services. Other countries might not be, but I think it's less relevant in Malaysia now, given most of the economy could work. But what is relevant in thinking about this is how it has impacted us and how it has impacted commerce and e-commerce at the beginning of COVID, and how it has shaped the behavior of the customers. If you think about it, back in MCO phase 2, right, where there were only like 10 essential services that were allowed. So if you want to buy something for entertainment purposes, so like let's say if you want to buy like maybe a new TV, or if you want to buy like a new gadget or so on to keep yourself entertained during the period, right? Back then the shops are not open. There's no ability for you to go and get non-essential goods. So what you see is that e-commerce actually was the bridge, and currently is also the bridge for non-essential goods to be delivered to the consumers. So if anything that you can't get from a shop, anything that you can't buy from a supermarket or a pharmacy, you would probably find ways to buy online. And in this case, right, we see that the behavioral change to e-commerce is pretty significant during last year, and from different industries, players and so on have said that this has actually increased e-commerce adoption by a couple of years. Because I think that there's a slow increase in trend over the years, but with the COVID and lockdowns, this actually has accelerated the adoption of e-commerce by the retailers and all the suppliers and so. If you look at, I think what is pertinent is if you compare, right, so this is like the sales funnel of how you traditionally buy goods. So if you look at like awareness, so okay, before you buy something, you want to buy something, you need to be aware of what is there. So normally what you do previously is you go to a shopping mall, you walk around, I mean, in your free time, then maybe you see a certain product that you're familiar with, you could go in, or you can see certain promotion, they have a signboard or banner somewhere to say, okay, there's sales in this place. So you go there, you look at a product, you maybe talk to the salesperson, they will tell you what's the benefit of the product and so on, right? So it's very like one-on-one or one-on-two, right? The salesperson will show you some sample. Then another example could be for product demonstration, is like inside or near the supermarket, people maybe like sell certain blender and so on, right? They'll give you some product demonstration, you look at it, they will maybe demonstrate to like 5 or 6 people. People who are interested, they will buy, and then they will buy it on the spot, and then the salesperson have to repeat the process maybe more than 20-30 times in a whole day, or even 100 times, to reach out to the customers. Then from there on, when you're interested, you will go to the cashier to pay either by card or cash. So with the lockdown impacting the impact of how traditional retail works, people are shifting more to e-commerce, and also an emerging trend of s-commerce. So if you look at e-commerce, right, so first thing is you need to know about where the item is, where to buy. I mean, if you are already a convert to the shopping platforms, you might go there for certain discovery. If not, during lockdown, when people are bored, they have in the free, they would like maybe go to Facebook or go to different website. Then you see certain targeted advertising. You click on it, you go to a website. Then the website will tell you certain description of the product, what this product do. Maybe there could even be video and so on. So with this, after that, you do a checkout. You have to pay by either a credit card. So cash. Okay, so you have to pay by a credit card or some form of e-payments, bank transfer. So what is also important here is that any of these e-commerce have to be collected from the retailers or the shipper, and be delivered to the customers. So that's where we see a big involvement of the third-party logistics here in the e-commerce trend. As retail shift a lot more to e-commerce, the deliveries part actually is very key to the success of e-commerce. So with deliveries, and also even offering things like a cash on delivery, which was also what people are used to at retail when they see a product and they pay the cash. So all these are important features for retailers to shift to e-commerce, and that's one of the key role that the third-party logistics is playing right now in this pandemic, and it will continue to grow in the future. So, and also one emerging trend we also see is that which is on live stream on social platform. So the live stream actually cuts across all three parts of the sales cycle. So it can be like a person selling a live fish on in Facebook Live. You say, oh, I have this fish, I have how many quantities, is much cheaper than what you get online, because they actually if they are the suppliers, they cut through all the margins from the distributor and the retail stores and all the fixed costs, right? They can sell it for a very cheap, much more discount. But then from there on, there's a demand there to actually match with the social media to the deliveries, to the eventual delivery of the products. So from here, if you look at, right, so these are the trends based on what we see, based on the shift from retail to e and s-commerce. So the rest of e-commerce actually creates a big change in the buying behavior. So I think as from one of the Nelson survey, we see that 1 in 3 people now actually prefer shopping online even after the restriction is lifted. So the behavior actually sticks with them, and they are very open to continue to buy online, as they like the convenience. Once they trust that the seller can deliver the goods to the expectation, they will continue the trend. So number 2 is on e-wallet being the new norm. So we see that with the switch to online, more people are adopting new payment methods, especially on e-wallets, which is a growing segment, and from the MCO 1.0, and I think they continue to plan to do so in the future. Then the third part is with this pandemic, I think people are prioritizing their needs over the wants. They are looking at buying their more essential goods, things that they really need, rather than rather than like a shiny new toy. So they will make less major purchases like home and car. They will buy all the essential items, maybe like detergent and so on. So how this behavior is shaping logistics, especially for e-commerce third-party logistics. So there's three areas we look at. So first is there needs to be a big adjustment in the supply chain based on the shift. So distribution of goods needs to shift from distribution centers to stores to a hybrid model that they can adopt a distribution from main warehouse to stores as well as to cater for e-commerce. So what we do have one of our clients who used to have like maybe a small segment of their warehouse dedicated to e-commerce fulfillment. What we see is that as the e-commerce part of the business grows significantly, they have to repurpose their warehouse such that a bigger proportion of the warehouse or even moving to a new warehouse dedicated just to serve the e-commerce orders. Logistics also have to be able to offer quicker SLA to the customers to be competitive. So maybe previously the expectation for e-commerce is that I can order items I can receive in 2-3 days, and maybe that was okay back then. But if you are used to the speed, let's say if you want to buy like say a Pampers for your baby, and you are running out, you need it like in the next 1 or 2 days. So having the assurance that the seller and the logistic can deliver will actually mean will actually help you maintain that behavior to continuously buy from certain provider who can meet the expectation of the customers. So next, what we see is that there's also a shift in so related to one also, but it's more on the tech part. So suppliers that traditionally supplies to shops, now some of them are looking at doing online sales direct to customers. So with that, they have to actually change a bit of their tech to be able to handle from just B2B orders to B2C orders. They also need to invest in additional touch points such as the CS, payment gateway website, and also to be able to partner with a logistic partner that can cater to the new delivery types. If their existing partners can support, then I think that will be good. But I think generally these suppliers are structured quite differently because basically based on the truck that they use. So for bulk move, usually you use bigger trucks, whereas for e-commerce, you need to think about how to do the distribution from, let's say if you're a central warehouse at Shah Alam, you need to deliver to places like Perlis or Kelantan, right? You need to have a partner to be able to do that and also use a smaller truck type. So third, we also see that there's a big expansion in the type of products that are being sold on e-commerce. So product that used to have low reach back then are like maybe live seafood, vegetables, and things that are more perishables, even like ice cream and so on, right? But these areas are gaining traction. So and also things like bulky deliveries of white goods like refrigerators and so on. People used to go to a department store to look at it and buy it, but now more people are moving online. So there will be an increased demand in logistic players that are able to service those emerging products because, like for example, live fish, vegetable, especially like live seafood or frozen seafood, requires a big cold chain operation, which I think right now there isn't a dominant player doing this for last mile delivery. There are players that are doing this delivery to the stores, but to the shops, I think right now is still quite greenfield, and most people are only doing themselves and restricted to selected regions that they can cover themselves with their own fleet or outsource to a local third-party provider. So some of the key takeaway will be that the global disruption in the supply chain is something unseen, I think, and this disruption is here to stay, which we really need to adapt to the new behavior and make sure that our business is able to gear towards the new consumer behavior. So, and with the move to e-commerce that we think is expedited by almost 5 years, company need to think of new ways to engage their customers. So last, essential or not, logistic actually acts as a bridge to reach the two sectors to the end customers to deliver any goods buy from any platforms to the hands of the customers. So I think this is one of the some of the key takeaways I've shared. I think after this, I'll just do a quick overview of company. So Ninjavan, we established in 2016. So we are currently delivering about 1.5 million parcels a day across Southeast Asia. So this is our growth trend for the group. You can see we started with about 5 million in 2016, all the way to 2020, which we delivered 343 million parcels. So we see exponential growth here, and this is also with a big growth trend from the shift from retail to e-commerce over the last few years, expedited by COVID. But we do see that this growth can continue. This will continue to grow even further in the future years, as we are still quite far behind in terms of e-commerce penetration when compared to more e-commerce developed country like China or US. So our strengths are in Southeast Asia. We have 100% coverage in all operating markets. We have about more than 31,000 staff covering about 2 million square miles of Southeast Asia. We have more than 1,600 hubs and stations across all 6 countries. So in Ninjavan Malaysia, we are going beyond logistics to empower our SMEs. I think our tech and our solution that we provide to SMEs enable them to sell online without worry about their logistics. We are integrated on various websites like Shopify and so on. It gives them a seamless experience from order to creation, so that they just worry about selling and we will do the deliveries. So we are also next day delivery guarantee partners for Lazada and Zalora. So for Ninjavan Malaysia specific, so we are 100% covered in Peninsular Malaysia. We cover every area in Peninsular Malaysia. We have about 80% growth in fleet size over the last year. We have more than 4,000 Ninja points. So Ninja points are point of presence in the different neighborhoods that we have. And like let's say like a shops within your area, if you see a Ninja point sticker, you can actually pick up or drop off your parcel in those areas. And we do millions of deliveries a month. So I think that comes to the end of the presentation.
Right. Thank you so much, Lin Zheng, for the very concise presentation and for highlighting to us how the industry has evolved during the pandemic. I'm sure there are more questions from the rest, so I will open this session to the rest of the participants to ask questions. For those that have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box and we will read it out later, or you can choose to put yourself in the queue by clicking raise hand button in Microsoft Teams. I will then call out your name before you unmute yourself to ask questions. That we have gathered the head of the webinar first. Yeah, Lin Zheng. Hey, can you talk a bit more business in think is Ninjavan's strengths that set you apart from your competitors?
So I think what sets us different from the competitors is I think we are new in the market. Not that new, but I think we look at different problems in a new way. We are tech enabled and we have our in-house tech team that is based in Singapore. So we are able to adapt to the trends quickly. Our product teams come out with product almost every few weeks. There are new improvements that we can adapt to new trends in the market. So things like social commerce and so on, right? We were able to work with different partners to enable. So let's say if you think about how you sell on Facebook Live, right? Like people just type in certain comments. It has to be integrated with certain tag and a certain order system that links back to us. So these are one of the strengths in our tech that we are able to move fast to adapt to the new trends.
Okay. We have one question in the queue, so maybe Patrick Ching, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, hi Lin Zheng. Patrick here, Lin Zheng.
Hi.
How do you differentiate yourself with other 3P players like GTEx or CityLink for that matter?
I don't think we would like to talk too much about competitors here. I think what we do here is that we always focus on how we can serve our customers better. We look at more ways to serve them, either through a better pickup service, a better customer service experience, and so on. But I think generally what I can say is that I wouldn't say about I won't compare them, but we do offer we do adapt to the customer's needs as and when they require certain things. We listen to them and we try to add that to our service portfolio.
I see. Okay. All right. Just another question. How many drivers right now do you have at the moment, Vincent?
I think we have I won't share the exact figure, but we have more than 1,000 drivers.
I see. And all these are using trucks, right? They don't use motorcycles?
So it's a mix of vans and motorcycles.
I see. I see. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Vincent.
Okay.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, Lin Zheng, so there are questions in the chat box. I'll just read it out. How has the margin trend been seeing that logistics has become very competitive?
Okay, I think we don't share too much about our financial information to the public. I think we're still a private company, but I would say I will just share that that there are different cost elements that have shifted with the competition, right? But there is also, so with more competition, if price is depressed, that's definitely not good for us. But at the same time, with more volumes, there are productivity gains as well. So with higher scale, you get better productivity, and with better productivity, it can help with certain depression in the average selling price of the product.
That case, may I ask, do you think that Ninja Van Malaysia scale has already reached the optimal level where you can actually be comfortable with, or you think there are still?
I think we are still evolving. I think we are still. I mean, we do see gains as we grow with better skill, but I will say that we continuously strive to improve our operating performance as well as optimizing with the right cost structure.
Do you intend to expand into last mile cold chain logistics?
So for last mile cold chain, it's something we did look a little bit into, but I don't think it's in our pipeline in the moment. I think cold chain logistics is it requires very heavy capex. I think the trucks, the warehouse, and all the different requirements to on this part. So it's something that is very niche and something it's not in our horizon at the moment. So I think there's one more question that's on whether our van can deliver vaccine. Right now we can't because we don't have the right equipment, and I will say that I think it's quite hard for even most existing players to deliver something that is as minus 20 degrees, because it requires maybe dry ice and so on to complement the environment of that van. But I'm also not a cold chain expert, so this is what I know at the moment.
And do you mind sharing the relative friendliness or restriction regulatory environment in Malaysia and in Singapore? How would you comment?
Okay, to be fair, I have less contact with the regulatory environment in Singapore, so I can't really comment on that. But I will say that Malaysia's regulatory environment, we are quite engaged with them. I think we do have dialogues with MCMC from time to time to share, as in both sides, we will share certain challenges we face. They also share with us like certain things that they want to do and so on. So I think the dialogue is very healthy, and it helps us to work with them, to share, and then we come to a middle ground as to if there's any gives them some inputs and help them before they actually come up with any regulations. So generally, I think they are quite they are engaging and with the industry, and I think that's good. That's good for both parties.
I think there are many questions actually focusing on your margins and price trend. I know you can't share in terms of the numbers, but we know that actually 2019 is not a good year for logistic players. A lot of them see margin squeeze. Some of them, the public listed company even report losses. So for in 2020, the pandemic hit and the demand increased a lot. The volume came in a lot. So throughout this period, right, do you think that now, especially after the pandemic, uh, where the consumers' behaviors have changed to shop online more, do you think now they are willing to pay more in terms of parcels delivery? And yeah, do you see the trend starting to ease off in terms of the margin squeeze among the logistic players?
So I think one thing we also need to be mindful of is about how logistic price affects e-commerce. So I mean, if you look at the slide I shared earlier, right, logistic is actually a real cost of e-commerce, and what's the cost of delivery actually affects the how big the e-commerce pie can grow to. So imagine if you want to buy a 20 ringgit product, right, but you have to pay 10 ringgit for delivery. Most of the time, people wouldn't buy those products. But we see certain platforms that are offering free shipping if you shop above a certain low amount, and those actually entice more people to buy online. So it's about one thing is on supply and demand, right? When we see that the price is trending to a level that people can accept, there will be a lot more demand, and with more demand, there's more volume, and more volume also means more revenue, right? So, and if we can find productivity gains from this increase, and then I think the margin can be the squeeze of the price can be offset by the increase in productivity.
So does that means that for now you think that logistic players or Ninja Van yourself will focus more on gaining the volume to reach the economy of scales instead of expanding your margins?
So I think there's two. So okay, sorry. Then on top of that, right, I think there's also part about service differentiation, right? So if you're offering a 3-day delivery service versus a guaranteed next day or a same-day delivery service, those actually can increase your margin because and also look at and increase the type of product you sell to. So let's say if you want to buy like a branded bag, for example, you might not be you won't worry about the logistic cost, and the retailer will not be uh, will be willing to pay higher price for you to deliver it to the customer at the right condition and in the shortest period of time. So it depends on how differentiated the service is, and that those things can actually expand the margin if your service is good enough and you can charge higher for this type of services. So it depends on the strategy of different companies. I mean, for me, I'm speaking more in terms of e-commerce logistics. I can't really speak so much for some of the other traditional logistic players whose business model might be a bit different from us. But in general, what we see is that there are room for growth in margins. There are room for growth in all these areas because the big increase in, I mean, if you want to get a proxy of the size of the market, right? If you think of a percentage of e-commerce GMV as a certain percentage goes into logistics. So if e-commerce is growing at a certain rate, logistic will actually go at a certain rate as well.
Yeah, and since you guys are backed by very strong financiers or investors behind Javan, can you share a bit more on like what are their expectations actually? Because vision from this industry largely is coming from these startups, especially backing have basically they have the advantage. They can expand very fast without worrying few years cash flow. So but also know that at the end of the day, all these investors are expecting return. So there must be a consolidation at the end of the day if the sector is too overcrowded and is costing unhealthy. Share a bit more, your view in terms of like what are their expectations, like when would they decided to stop financing startups, or what are the metrics they're actually looking for?
Okay, I don't think I can share too much about this, and to be fair, I'm also not privy to some of this spot discussion that happens at a HQ level. But in general, I think as a group, we are focusing on serving our customers better, being able to scale to the expectation of the market, and being able to improve on our margins. I think these are the areas that any companies are focusing on. Any company will be focusing on is to getting your bottom line to be good, being able to grow the market and to sustainably grow in all the markets we are in. I think in Malaysia as well.
Yeah, agree with you. So at the end of the day, it still comes to the bottom line, right? So the next question is, when will the sector consolidate? Because it has been overcrowded for the past like even 5 years, and everyone is actually expecting the consolidation to happen even much earlier, but it is not. So in a recent report published by McKinsey, they actually showed that in Southeast Asia, the funds especially the funds from VCs are actually growing much faster and in a bigger amount than ever. But they realized that the funding rounds has decreased, which means that they are focusing more on expanding the existing business than bringing in new participants or new startups into this sector. Do you agree with this statement?
Okay, for the general funding climate, I think I'm not so familiar with. As to your question on consolidation, I think I do not want to speculate on this. I do, but I feel that in this market, focusing on e-commerce, is actually it's a big and growing pie, and there could be more parties that are involved here, and there is no immediate risk of I don't foresee immediate risk of any consolidation, at least not that I'm aware of. But I do think that the market is big enough for a few key players to excel in.
We go back to the questions in the chat box. We have this asked that did you see lower trends in volumes during the RMCO or CMCO, where people shifted their spending towards services instead of goods? So like when people are allowed to go out, do you think that we spend less online?
Generally, we do see I think the trends, there are different trends for the year, right? I think generally there are certain like festive period, then that contribute to certain sales. Then usually year-end period, Christmas, there's also type of different sales. So if you sort of merge that together with the MCO, RMCO, MCO impact, right? There's definitely a big impact on MCO, especially I think right now that we are in the MCO, right? We do see increase in number of deliveries as not every sector can operate, especially for retail. I think most of the malls are still closed, and I think as of now they are still not able to operate, right? From my understanding. So we do see that for certain discretionary product spend, people would still are still buying online. So to the question, right? We do see that when things are open up, the trend will slightly go down a little bit, but generally it's to a level that is higher than previous levels.
Then tough period of time for a lot of local businesses and SMEs. Can you share more about how Ninja Van has supported these businesses during this?
So we do partner with a lot of SMEs. We have a sales team across different parts of Malaysia. So I think we partner with one, like for example, we partner with one of the shippers. They're selling cinema fashion. It's called Hilalina. So what we do is we have a strong partnership with them. We help them with all the issues, all the things related to logistics, such that they focus on growing their business. So they focus on selling. We focus on improving our service, the pickup, and the delivery for them to help them to expand their business. At the same time, we also offer new products such as like our Ninja Packs, which you can just buy from our website, and you can ship products to anywhere in Peninsular Malaysia at your convenience. So these are type of things that we are working on to improve, to help SMEs to grow their business online.
Yeah, so talking about this, there's actually an initiative by the government to give discounts to the SMEs for their parcels delivery to encourage them to go online earlier when during the first MCO. So I think it's still ongoing now. Some of the participants include like Post and GDEX. Can I know if Ninja Van is part of this initiative?
Sorry, can you please repeat your question a bit?
So during the last MCO, the government came out with this initiative where they are asking the logistic players to give discounts to the SMEs for their parcels delivery. This is to encourage that the SMEs. So yeah, I was just wondering if Ninja Van is part of.
So I think the difference between GDEX and Post is that I think they do have a lot more retail points, and the discounts will be tied to some of their retail points. As for us, at the moment, our retail presence is still more limited to the drop-off points where we sell more of the products online using Ninja Packs. So we do run promotion for Ninja Packs at a discount, and we do provide these discounts to anyone who wants to buy these products. But we were not in that program because I think it's a bit, we do not have that, it's less applicable for our current service.
I'm not sure if you can share, but I will just ask. Could you share more on your recent funding round? Was it to fuel further expansion or support booking?
Not able to share more details on this part. Sorry.
So what factor would you consider as the biggest threat to disrupt your business sustainability?
I think for us, we do look at our business environment fairly regularly. We do risk assessment onto the risks, the opportunities, and so on. We look at our customer base. We look at where the industry trend is going. So far, I think there are definitely threats in the moment. Let's say if you have bigger competitors, well-funded competitors coming in, you have certain changes in regulatory environment and so on. But I don't foresee a very significant. Okay, so I think looking at the trends right now, I don't see that there will be a very big significant threat that will disrupt our business sustainability and growth. Because I think we are riding on that wave, and I think the wave seems to be only getting bigger. So if you look at e-commerce as a penetration of retail, right, in Southeast Asia, I think in Malaysia, I think the number is about like 3 to 5%. I think that could be pre-pandemic as well. But if you look at China and US, it's close to like 30%. I mean, it depends on various reports, right? So 30%. So the room to growth is there's still a big room to grow there. And we see us benefiting from the change in the consumer behavior, and this is also I mean it's also like a steroid shot because of COVID-19 and M related impact to the market.
Thanks. Next question. I think you have mentioned a little bit in your presentation. Maybe you can just quickly summarize. Do you share your experience when COVID-19 hit Malaysia and how it affected your business plan? Do you have to change your business strategy completely or just minimally?
I think for us, it changed very significantly. I think I covered a little bit in the presentation. So I think the first thing is we need to implement the right SOP to adapt to the new environment with like face mask, sanitizer, contactless delivery. Then at the same time, we had to really scale up quite a fair bit as we see a demand really went up. I think February traditionally was a low month for usual years. We actually saw deliveries double in the span of a couple of weeks. So we had to really scale our operations at a very short period of time, and I also covered that this actually costs more than what we would have if we had scaled up in a controlled manner.
So, in terms of the cost pressure that it has caused during the time where you are adjusting that to the new normal, right? The cost pressure still exists now, or that your team has already
I think certain areas are still present now, especially like for East Malaysia deliveries. We see that the freight rates from West to East Malaysia is still relatively high, and it's quite significantly higher than what it was before when there were a lot of passenger flights going there. And but for other areas, let's say like trucks, vans, we do see certain improvements where we could start we can start planning to get new trucks at higher purchase, renting more longer term lease to reduce the short-term impacts. So in summary, it's more of the impact is quite large at the start, but we see that as we get used to the new capacity, we are able to optimize the cost as we go.
But you guys are still in process still in the process of getting there, right? So do you think it's still far from where you can actually minimize the cost?
I won't comment on how far we are from which line you're referring to, but I would say generally we see cost improvements over the years. I think over the time I've been here in Malaysia, we see cost improvement year on year, and it can be quite significant over year on year. As we achieve the scale, I think we do see the improvements.
That interesting question. In your opinion, what is a viable time frame for the adoption of drones or electronic vehicles in?
So okay, electronic vehicle is something we are considering as well, but also depends on the availability of the vehicle in the country. So right now, I don't think there are many viable options at the moment, though we do see some of these in other countries, say like China and so on. They have quite a few. So it's depending on whether like MOT, MCMC, and the industry, whether we can find some whether they can find some to approve certain vehicle types that we can consider that. As for drone delivery, right? It's drone delivery is a very interesting concept in the sense that if you think about what drone is helping us is I would say it's more on certain rule. It has to be something that it's more difficult for our current drivers to deliver to. So it can be like, let's say if the driver takes like 1 hour to go up or 30 minutes to go up a certain hill, like you have to wind a winding road. If you have drones that go directly from bottom to the top, that can help with the productivity of the driver. But right now we see that in most urban areas, they're actually, I mean, with all the restrictions on the aviation flights and so on, that is not so applicable for urban areas for e-commerce delivery. But I mean, of course, if you think about like for more health emergency or this, and that is possible. But I mean, that's for separate discussion. So we do see that these electronic vehicles and drones are something that we are considering as we are considering from continuously. So it's just what's the right time to launch the product, and also with support from our regulators, who I think, for example, flying aviation is actually quite sensitive. There's a lot of restrictions on where you can fly, what time to fly, and so on, right? So once we get this up with the authorities, I think that's something we could do in the future.
But is this something already in discussions with the authorities, or you think we are still kind of far away?
We do. I think it's right now there are certain aspects are in discussion with different authorities, but I think it could take some time before a decision is made from them.
I was just wondering if you're aware how this is our progress in Malaysia in terms of the EV and the drones as compared to other countries where Ninja Van is based in, like Singapore. Do you think other markets are much more good or ready to accept this kind of step?
So I think I think the discussion, I would say the countries that have adopted drone delivery that I know of is more like in China or some areas of US. So generally this addresses delivery to more suburban areas, especially for areas that are less dense, harder to reach. That's when drone delivery is more accessible. It makes more economic sense for drone delivery because it's more costly for a driver to drive like 1-2 hours to reach a certain location rather than have a drone fly straight line bypassing all the barriers to reach the end destination. So in Southeast Asia countries, I think it hasn't, at least for now, we haven't seen uptake of this in the countries that we are in at the moment. But we are constantly exploring and talking to different partners if there are certain areas that we can optimize with this drone deliveries.
Thanks. Can you share some of the initiatives proposed by MCMC during the recent MPCIL lab session? I'm sure they have reached out to players like you guys.
So I think we have dialogue with them, but we are not privy to share what is being discussed. I think we have to wait for MCMT for their official communications on this part, because I think they would publish certain reports to the public after this session.
There is no more question now in the chat box. If I have missed out any of the questions, or if there are any more new questions, please feel free to post it. Raise your hand so you unmute yourself and ask your questions to directly. It has been noticed in this industry that because of the speed of deliveries, there are quite a lot of van accidents over the months in different. and insurance companies are that's I think his questions is more of your employee safety and how is Ninja Van trying to.
So I think for us, in general, we don't, as in for at least for us, we don't see that big proportion of accident from our drivers. I think there could be a handful over a period of time, but it is not as common as it sounds here. It could be a contribution of different parties that, but for us, what we we have is we work with our drivers. We send them to like for safety courses, safe driving, domestic driving courses on that. So in that sense, we see that with that, if they're more aware, there's less of that case. And for us, for speed of delivery, I think it's a bit okay. So for us, we have planned routes per day. So those certain they do have certain productivity goals. They are not as quick as they are not tight on jobs like, for example, like Grab. So for example, like the on-demand deliveries and so on, where the faster they finish, the next one they have. So we do our part in educating our drivers, riders, and making sure they know what's the right road safety behavior.
All right, okay, for that, we have come to the end of the webinar today. Thank you very much, Lin Zheng, for sharing with us your insights on the industry. And thanks everyone for your time to dial in, as well as Busa, our partner, for organizing the webinar with us.